Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
The Durham Public Schools Board of Education regular monthly meeting is now in session. At this time, we wish to extend a warm welcome to everyone who is joining us this evening. The purpose of this meeting is to inform our parents, staff, and constituents about the work aligned with our mission to embrace, educate, and empower every student to innovate, serve, and lead. Tonight, the administration will be presenting information to keep you up to date on our strategic plan. Thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. Martha Romo Urguiles is a Durham Public Schools ESL teacher with 35 years of experience. Ms. Romo Urguiles has 17 years of experience teaching and interpreting in the United States. She is our Spanish interpreter for tonight's meeting.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Marta Romo. Estoy contenta de estar aquí y vengo a prestar servicios de interpretación. Thank you.
As we get started, please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the Be Our Guest dinner invitees and celebrations. So board members, please join me down in the front.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Oh, good evening, everyone. All right, there we go. We're live. All right. To meet the goals of our DPS strategic plan and align with our new mission, the Be Our Guest dinner provides an opportunity for stakeholders in the Durham community to meet with the DPS Board of Education, as well as senior administration in a small, casual setting to discuss how DPS and the community can work together to ignite the limitless potential of our students, schools, and staff. We had a wonderful Italian spread prepared by our Northern Culinary Department. It was delicious. And we welcome parents representing several different schools. Thank you all for giving up your time and providing feedback and insight how we can best serve our students. So as I call your name, please come up to walk the red carpet. Can I have Miss Denisa Baker from Pearsontown Elementary? Thank you for coming. Raquel Rogers from Hillside High. And Carlette Dandy Brewster from Hillside as well.
I see all of these polo shirts in front of me, and I feel like I missed a memo somewhere. It's my pleasure to introduce the celebrations portion of this evening's meeting, where we have the opportunity to recognize and thank outstanding students, staff, and partners. And we'll kick things off tonight with the Durham Public Schools Student of the Month. Our Student of the Month program spotlights students who distinguish themselves with character and integrity, who are active in their schools and community, and who maintain excellent academic standards. Tonight, we will be recognizing the October Student of the Month. And I would like to ask Tanya Williams, principal of Riverside High School, to come up and introduce him.
Good evening. Elijah King is our Student of the Month at Riverside High School. I've had the pleasure of being Elijah's principal since elementary school, and I am so proud of Elijah King and all of his successes. Elijah is an outstanding individual with many talents and abilities, and he shares those talents with our entire school community on a daily basis. He has a 3.5 GPA, president of the Interact Club, a member of our Pirates Hook, which is our newspaper, a member of the National Honor Society, and former president of Riverside's Black Student Union. He is the epitome of a true leader, organized, empathetic, reflective, equitable. Because he cares so deeply about the community, Elijah has given much of his time and energy toward improving it. Elijah was a Senate page, board member of Made in Durham, a research intern at the Samuel Du Bois Cook Center on Social Equity at Duke, board member of Inside Out, a Southern Coalition for School Justice steering committee member, and youth engagement strategist for County Commissioner Brenda Howerton. Elijah is a busy young man. Elijah's philosophy in life is to embrace everybody, no matter how different from you they may be. He lives his entire life following that philosophy. Elijah King shows the best of Riverside High School. He embraces the diverse community of Durham and desires to make it a better place. He is a true pirate. So please congratulate Elijah. Yes, Mama.
Thank you to Principal Williams, and congratulations to Elijah. I would now like to ask Mina Ford, PBIS MTSS Coordinator, to please come in and introduce our next celebration.
Good evening, board members and Superintendent Mubinga. I am here to recognize the following schools for their outstanding implementation of MTSS. MTSS is a multi-tiered framework which promotes school improvement through engaging research-based academic and behavioral practices. North Carolina MTSS employs a systems approach using data-driven problem solving to maximize growth for all. The following schools submitted applications and have done an outstanding job of implementing North Carolina MTSS at their schools. Those schools are C.C. Spalding, that's C.C. Spalding Elementary School and their MTSS team. Bethesda Elementary School, Creekside Elementary School, Mangum Elementary School, and their team members, Neal Middle School, Oak Grove Elementary School, thank you, R.N. Harris Elementary School, Rogers Herr Middle School, Thank you. Yes. So proud of y'all. Githens Middle School. Wow. Great job. So proud of y'all. Yes, hey. Thank you. Hey, I'm so proud of y'all. How was the field trip? Spring Valley Elementary School. W.G. Pearson Elementary School. The following two schools are being recognized for outstanding implementation for Durham Public Schools. They applied for exemplar, so we're giving them the Exemplar DPS Award, and those schools are Bethesda Elementary School and Burton Elementary School. That's right. And now we have 4 schools that actually received the North Carolina MTSS Green Ribbon Recognition Award. This is the first year that DPI has given out this award, and we have 4 schools that won it. These schools will be recognized tonight and also recognized next month at the Exceptional Children's Conference in Greensboro, North Carolina. So a special thank you to these, our Green Ribbon schools: Hillendale Elementary School, Lakewood Elementary School, the School of Creative Studies, School for Creative Studies. You're very welcome. Well, thank you. And Carrington Middle School. Thank you all.
All right, next up, we will not be presenting a certificate. The recipients are coming to show off their award, and we're excited about this. And I would like to invite Julius Monk, our Chief Operating Officer, to come forward and to introduce our next celebration.
I like getting claps for not even winning anything. That's awesome. Just reading. Good evening, board members, Dr. Mubenga. It is an honor to spotlight our very own School Nutrition Services Department. The School Nutrition Services Department is proud to have received both an outstanding and gold designation in the first ever Farm to School of North Carolina Awards from the Farm to School Coalition for their achievements in expanding and enhancing farm to school initiatives in the state. Awards were given based on 11 criteria, such as purchasing local food, use of local food in school meals and student taste tests, collaboration with local farmers and food partners, support of healthy local food environments, classroom curriculum, and hands-on cooking. The outstanding designation was given to School Nutrition for demonstrating a commitment to engage diverse stakeholders, a comprehensive and holistic approach, creative uses of resources, innovative activities, and an ability to share lessons learned and serve as a vocal champion of farm to school. The gold designation is awarded for meeting at least 7 of the award criteria at the gold level or above. this is where you read. So come on.
I think this is where you say, come on down.
Well, come on down, school nutrition.
I would just like to introduce Sky Harris. She's our program development specialist, and Becky Pope. She's our registered dietitian, and they've both been instrumental in this award. Thank you.
All right. On this one. All right. We're now going to present a special recognition to our incredible, talented, and numerous financial services team that is in here tonight. We would like to congratulate Paul Azure, our Chief Finance Officer, and the entire Finance Department for receiving, once again, the Government Finance Officers Association Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. Now, what this certificate means is the highest form of recognition in governmental accounting and financial reporting, and its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by the DPS Finance Department. Priority 5 of our strategic plan is all about our efficiency and our effectiveness in the use of our taxpayers' resources to support a high-quality education for every child in Durham Public Schools. We keep faith with the taxpayer. This award demonstrates it. This team makes it happen year after year after year. And we are grateful to you for not only keeping our paychecks going, but for maintaining the honor of Durham Public Schools in our community. And I would like to invite Paul Azure forward to introduce his staff and to receive a certificate of our own for special recognition.
Good evening. I missed the memo also, but that's okay. This is truly an honor to continue the incredible finance awards year after year after year. It's a hard thing to do. We have a staff of 23, but we service over 5,000 people in one way, shape, or form. And this staff is an incredible staff. They continue to impress me each and every day. And they continue to work hard and collaboratively together to make sure that we are doing what needs to be done for the children of Durham Public Schools and keeping us in the black, out of the red. That's important. But they are an exceptional team, and I want to introduce each one of them to come up. Stephanie Williams, the Director of Finance. Denise Johnson-Moore, our Administrative Assistant. Elisa Coley, who works with our bank recons and our capital construction. Sheila Tharrington, who's our Budget Director. Sarita Hunter, who is an accounts payable clerk. Deborah Brooks Savage, who is also an accounts payable clerk. Evangeline Blackwell Burton, who is in our payroll section. Cindy Greenhill, who is in our payroll section, and she knows everybody. And Lee Honig, who is our AS400 system administrator and keeping all our financial systems going.
All right. Next up, the Durham Public Schools Office of Public Affairs launched in the last year a recognition pinning initiative to acknowledge both internal and external stakeholders who exhibit what we call spark-like characteristics. These are the people who operate above and beyond in demonstrating leadership and excellence on behalf of Durham Public Schools, as Durham Public Schools employees, supporters, and even students. So we're extremely excited to celebrate these people who are influencing, who are marketing and engaging our community and schools to ignite the limitless potential of DPS. And as I call your name, please come up to receive your pin and to walk the red carpet. We have 3 people who are Spark supporters, administrators, non-instructional staff, and other individuals in or outside of DPS who provide a foundation and expertise to support our students, teachers, and schools. And the first recognition goes to Angela Baston of Lakewood Elementary. The second goes to Tina Rogers from Lakewood Elementary. And then Cynthia Dean from Curriculum and Instruction. And in addition to our Student of the Month, who already received a Spark Pin, tonight we have Lou Keaton, an 8th grader at Githens Middle School. And Lou recently represented Githens and DPS as a speaker at the Talent Delayed/Talent Denied 2 conference, Transforming Education for North Carolina's Low-Income or Minority Gifted Students at Duke University. Lou Keaton. Okay, wait a minute. That sounds like a family member who needs to be represented. And join Lou at the front. Maybe not. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the celebrations portion of tonight's event, and thank you very much.
All right. Let's see here. The next item on our agenda is the superintendent's update. Dr. Mubanga.
Thank you, Chairman Lee, members of the board, community members. It's always given me a great pleasure on a monthly basis to give some updates of the work that we're doing at DPS. This month has been a really busy month, and my staff can testify on that. But I'm very pleased as we have been engaging our community members, and especially talking about overcrowding of our schools. We are receiving really great feedback from our community, and kudos to our staff for a job well done, really making sure that our community members understand the problems as well as the solutions to those problems. We are continuing those engagement in our community. Last night, I was able to team up with our mayor, with the trade bond community. We had a great meeting. We understood that some of those communities do not have students in our schools. But when you look at the whole community, when we're going to have issues such as bond, things of that nature, we're going to need everybody to support DPS. That's the reason why we're planting those seeds along the way, meeting with those communities. Also, a few weeks ago, I was able to meet with the Southwest Rotary Club. Again, great conversation. Last week, I met with Interdenominational Alliance, our faith-based community. Great conversation. When we're having those conversations, we are definitely highlighting some of the successes that we're having, as well as some of the challenges that we are facing and the one that we're going to face in the future, so that together with our community, we'll be able to provide good solutions to our problems. So we're going to continue those conversations. I have our meetings lined up with our realtors. And I'm going to say this, as we are celebrating our successes, we gained about 500 students this year. We've been really engaging our realtors because they are the ones that are telling our stories. And we don't want to stop at that point. We really want to continue those conversations to make sure that all the newcomers that are coming to Durham and the current parents that don't have a student at DPS, that we're having those good conversations. And I can say this, I'm getting really good vibes as I engage the community, getting those feedback in the direction of DPS. So tonight, our staff will be presenting about some of the issues that we're facing with overcrowding. Last night, I talked to the community at Trebon. We cannot expect to have a growth of 20 people moving to Durham on a daily basis. And we're projecting probably 160,000 folks in the next 10 years. We cannot expect that growth without thinking about building schools. So we're gonna need support from our stakeholders. We're gonna need support from everyone in the community. When the issues come up about bond and things of that nature, we need our support. That's the reason why we are engaging our community. So we got some good feedback as we engage our community talking about overcrowding. And I just want to say this before my staff come up and present. We heard you. As we heard you, we have short-term solutions as well long-term solutions. We don't want to rush anything because we don't want any unintended consequences. Trust us. We're going to do this very carefully. We're going to work with all our stakeholders as we're moving forward. Thank you, board members. I know our staff are going to present. You attended some of those meetings as well. I just want us, as we are going to proceed, we have to proceed carefully because they are really complicated problems, as we said this before, and we're going to need to proceed really carefully. Thank you for your support, and thank you, community, as we're going to come to you talking about bond issues and other things. Definitely, our students deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mabenga. The next item on our agenda is the agenda review and approval. As we start this, I want to make a suggestion that not a suggestion, but make a change to the agenda and pulling the resolution honoring Omega Curtis Parker off of consent and having its own item. Maybe we'll make that 9.5 where it is standalone before we do the operating services. That's a change I would like to suggest. Are there any other changes needed for the agenda?
Move approval of the agenda with the amendment.
Yeah.
Been moved and properly seconded that we approve the agenda with the amendment. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please use the same sign. Passes unanimously. The agenda changes pass unanimously. The next item on the agenda is Board of Education meeting minutes for September 26th, 2019. Seek of approval.
Move approval of the minutes from September 26th.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded that we approve the Board of Education minutes for September 26th, 2019. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, please use the same sign. That passes unanimously as well. The next item on our agenda is general public comment. We have, for general public comment, we have 5 signed up, but I will ask Ms. Newsom, are you interested in speaking on the the last item that we have here, or do you want to stay at the student assignment boundary planning recommendations? Do you want to stay on general public comment, or do you want to, for the topic? Doesn't really matter. We'll just leave it as, I just thought I'd put it out there and ask. The comment's before it. The comment starts out the section. We'll leave it at general public comment, and we'll just leave it there. My bad, I just thought I'd ask that. Okay. Okay, we'll do general public comment. The first speaker is Dr. Rhonda Taylor Bullock, and then Beth Newsom.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am here this evening as the Education Committee Chair of the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People. And I just want to say before I share some of my remarks that back in June, I came before you all and presented 7 asks of the district. We are very pleased with the progress that the district has made so far on 2 of the asks. Well, made progress on all of the asks, but 2 notably in starting the school year with racial equity training. And so we're very pleased with that, and very pleased that new hires went through racial equity training. So as we celebrate that and appreciate the progress that we're moving and the direction that we're moving in, we've come with a round 2 of ask. And so I'll read these aloud to you all, and I'll just like last time, I'll send a follow-up email. I have a few hard copies here with me as well if you wanted it tonight or if you want it right now, but I'll go ahead and share those. I am again presenting these on behalf of the Education Committee of the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People. We, the Education Committee, ask that Durham Public Schools, number 1, creates teacher cadet programs in every comprehensive high school taught by an educator of color. This aligns with priority 3 from the strategic plan. The target school year for this is fall 2020. As the district is making efforts to diversify the teaching staff, we believe that our students are a source. We have a great population of students from which we can grow our own educators, and we believe that implementing this course with the intentionality of having a teacher teach it who looks like the students we're trying to recruit, that will help strengthen the pool of educators coming back to teach in Durham. Number 2, we ask that DPS creates a DPS Teaching Fellow Scholarship for high school graduates of color who have a commitment to attend a historically Black college or university and return to teach in the district for at least 2 years. This aligns with priority 3 from the strategic plan, and our target school year for this is 2020-2021. We believe, especially with the implementation of the Durham Public Schools Foundation, that would be a great partnership for something lasting that could continue to grow and build into our educational system and support our local HBCUs. Number 3, we ask that DPS allots financial support at each school to build mentorship programs that will be based in culturally responsive practices and racial equity. We ask that one of our committee members plays a role in writing up the description for determining the requirements to receive these funds. This aligns with priority 2 of the strategic plan, target school year, fall 2020. Number 4, we ask that DPS requires every staff member to earn 7 hours of racial equity training every year. This aligns with priority 2 from the strategic plan, target school year 2020-2021. And number 5, we ask that DPS places teachers with disproportionate write-up patterns and principals with disproportionate exclusion rates, including but not limited to suspensions and restorative practice center referrals. We request that you place those on an action plan that includes efforts to support the educators' growth in this area. Who is on the plan does not have to be public knowledge, as you would not release that anyway, but the numbers of educators on support plans should be made public. This aligns with priority 2 from the strategic plan, target school year of implementation, 2020-2021. And with this last one, we want to be clear to note that this is not a gotcha. This is not trying to call teachers out or call principals out, but it is a moment of intentionality to recognize that these disproportionalities are problematic, and the district is going to hold schools accountable for providing support plans for those educators so that they can meet the needs and challenge those disproportionalities, and then make next steps after support has been provided. And so we request a written response from the Durham Public Schools prior to the next board meeting as a reflection and reaction to the asks that have been presented this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Newsom.
We are fortunate that Durham is an engaged community, and an engaged public has strong opinions, making discussions about school reassignment complicated and perhaps controversial. As we discuss reassignment, we need to have a thoughtful and frank conversation about privilege in our schools, about concentrated inequality. I have very strong concerns that the proposed middle school reassignment plan concentrates families of privilege at Githens. We can't formulate and implement an equitable and fair plan without taking socioeconomic status, wealth, access to power, race, ethnicity into account. Please expand the parameters of reassignment discussion to include issues of equity and fairness. I think this is the small, I know this is a necessary fix. I'm not questioning that at all. I'm the parent of a 6th grader at Githens. We have this supersized class, and my daughter has classmates who are in the catacombs of Githens right now in storage units. So we know that this has to happen. But I think we need to have a very frank discussion about this, because this is also the prelude to the big reassignment conversation we're all going to have. So I think this is good practice, and it has to happen. I know that this is a short-term fix, but the short-term fix has to take these issues into account, because I was trying to get information, and I understand that the free and reduced price lunch data can't be used when making reassignment decisions. But as a parent, when I look at that data on the website, I can extrapolate when I see that C.C. Spalding and Lakewood are the 2 schools that are going to be pulled out and go to Brogdon, and those schools have much higher rates. So we have to have this discussion. I don't know if it's going to be in public. I mean, some of it has to be in public, but as a parent and as a stakeholder, I think this is an important discussion to have. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you. We have Millicent Rogers, Dr. William Jackson, then Reverend Fatima Sella.
Good evening. I'm standing as a recent member to the Black Parent Leaders. We appreciate the work from the district and their collaboration with the Black Parent Leaders. We're appreciative of the decrease in numbers for school suspension and district's acknowledgement that there's still more work to be done. We appreciate the deliberate intentionality of RPC being more than ISS and the way that Dr. Hardy has shared next steps. The district administration has been responsive to every request. Regarding the request for data for who is suspending the most, the district wants us to trust that they are tracking the teachers who are disproportionately suspending kids, but that trust was lost when it uncovered what was happening in ISS like at DSA. Transparency is vital to rebuilding that trust, even in coding the data, figuring it out, and making it not complicated. It is disappointing that we do not have access to the data around which teachers are doing the suspensions. However, as compromise goes, we have been promised to be included in the quarterly data analysis that Deputy Superintendent Dr. Hardy completes and to track the trends. We will continue to support the decrease of suspensions, the increase of restorative practices that eliminate the disproportionate rates of discipline for Black students. We're also shifting towards the increase to access of AIG honors and advanced academics. The district is aware of the disparities and is tracking those trends. We have 3 asks around the access to advanced academics. 1, better communication to parents, and deliberate pathways that are easily read and understood posted on the website and delivered as early as elementary school. 2, policy of an opt-out access to advanced academics as opposed to an opt-in for kids being placed in honors who do not qualify. We want more proactive inclusion. 3, disaggregated data by race and school of who is currently in AIG, honors, and AP, and the past 3 years, and for the past 3 years, so that we can see the trends, and a plan for increase in Black students in these courses. Excellent job to Dr. Mubanga. Thank you for your time. Exceptional follow-through from Dr. Hardy and Dr. Bullock, who always provide transparency and discussion around race equity and demonstrate a willingness to do this work. Excellent teamwork and great partnership. We appreciate it.
Would you mind sending us your asks
Oh, we will.
via email?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Dr. Jackson.
Good evening, y'all. So, William Jackson, I'm here representing the Durham Committee of Affairs of Black People, specifically the Education Committee. So I'm just kind of following up on some of Dr. Bullock's points made earlier. One thing we wanted to just highlight with the teacher cadet programs, the teacher fellowship, the teacher fellow scholarship, is just this idea that those attached to the strategic plan areas are priority number 3, to increase the number of teachers of color in the program. So, just kind of highlighting that idea that hopefully we're trying to be helpful. So as much as it's an ask, it's also, I guess, suggestions. Then as well, one of the ones that we didn't get to talk to previously was just the inclusion of a mentorship program that is based in culturally responsive practices and racial equity. So a lot of times we get a lot of mentorship programs, but they tend to kind of lean towards like respectability politics and kids having to fit into a certain box as opposed to like them thinking about how to create new systems of equity and justice. And so that's like a real big point for us on the mentoring piece. So just not anybody, right? And definitely want to reiterate the racial equity training. I mean, we have, I think, close to 50 or more % kids of color in the school system. So we know that those kids are experiencing racial bias. And so to mediate that, I think at least 7 hours would be nice. And then finally, I think the thing around the write-up patterns, as we think about priority number 2. So one, we know that when kids are in school, they learn. Right. And so we can't have kids being suspended. And we also know that there's a lot of data that shows that Black and brown kids tend to be disproportionately suspended for the same behaviors, meaning that they don't necessarily do anything wrong. They're just being suspended because they're Black or brown. So what that means is that we need to keep track of those teachers who are having issues with seeing that child's humanity and therefore suspending them because of their color. Right. And so that's why we're asking for that transparency around that. And how do we support those teachers who are having those own internal issues, right? And then those internal issues are harming our children. So how do we help them get their internal issues out of the way so that now our kids can learn? So super grateful to Dr. Mubanga, Dr. Hardy, and Dr. Kelvin Bullock for all of y'all's hard work in trying to get this done. I know the change management around this racial equity stuff is incredibly hard. And so I'm super appreciative to y'all for how you've been making a way, probably out of no way. And so we continue want to be supportive. And if y'all have any questions or you think we can be helpful, please let us know.
Thank you.
Good evening. It's good to see your faces. I am grateful, first and foremost, number one, that we celebrate first, and how grateful I am for that. I celebrate you and the work you're doing and the work that has been moving forward, which I know is a hard work as far as racial equity and inclusiveness and how we do it in the school system. I want to thank my colleagues, all the 4 beautiful humans that came before, all moving in the same threads of what we're desiring to be seen and heard here. I'm specifically tackling one I'm specifically tackling and talking about RPC, ISS RPC, and that Dr. Hardy did a beautiful job of coming up with a form. So what happens is that what was uncovered is that many students are not getting work when they're in in-school suspension or RPC. And so one of the things is that we didn't want children to be doubly punished while there, that they're not receiving work that they will be held accountable for. So one thing we asked was that there'd be a form that would list all the students' classes, and then you would know which work was being given to which students, and then how you were going to respond when a student wasn't getting work for that course. So let's just say DSA, which has 7 courses. So we got a sheet from Deputy Hardy that was beautiful, but it did not list. We would just say we needed to list classes or have a space where there could be all the classes listed for that student. And then a listing of who sent in work or what work was given to the student while they were there. We would also like on that sheet to be done, how is the school or teachers accountable for when there's no work given? So if that slot is gone and the student is in there and there's no English assignment, there's no math assignment, what are we going to do? Are we going to send the student back to the class? Do we have something to fill that in? And we would also like that form to be able to be in duplicate or sent over email, or even part of PowerSchool if possible, so that way I, as a parent, can see what happened in RPC, can see what work my child was given, what work was still absent. It's just a way of making us accountable to what happens in RPC to make sure that education is still happening and that we know as parents and our students can still even be, if they're deemed out of community, that they're still learning in that environment. So those are our asks for that sheet, that there would be a sense of which all classes can be listed. There'll be a sense of which we can get a copy as parents of what happened in that space for as far as classwork. And third, what happens when no work is given? What are you gonna do? And I would like the answer to not be that the students just gotta suffer through. Please don't let that be your answer, okay? So, thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Dr. Mabenga.
All right, board members, you all know we don't make comments after public comments like this, but I just wanted to make few comments here. All right? Excuse me for my repetition. I would like to say this. Pretty much, these folks that spoke tonight, they know how closely we've been working with them. So we've been there in the community, working along the way. We appreciate all the feedback that they've been giving us. We are very grateful for that, and we're making progress. But last month, our HR person came and reported about the number of Black teachers that we have in the district. I know a lot of folks were not here. I just really wanted us also to be able to celebrate what we have. So we have about 48% of our students are African-American students, and our staff, our teachers, is about 39.7. Roughly 40% of our teachers are African-Americans. We have to celebrate that, because if you have to pull out the district, they don't have that. So that means our HR has been working really hard. As we're getting more feedback to make it better, I really want us also to be celebrating what we have in place. 40% of our teachers are Black. So that's really unheard in other places. You can name all these big districts, they don't have it. So I really wanted to commend our staff for working really hard, and thank you for more feedback that you're giving us. We're gonna make it better. I really wanted us to celebrate that.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mabenga. All right, that's it for general public comment. And so we'll move forward. We moved the resolution honoring Omega Curtis Parker to the next agenda item. And so we'll move there. Now, in your packages, you will see the resolution.
Could we take 30 seconds? My glasses are in the back.
That's fine. That's fine. And we will start things off with Miss Minnie Fort Brown. We'll let her
It is an honor to honor a queen, and clearly Omega Curtis Parker was just that. She already had everything. She already did everything, and she already knew everything. And clearly everybody knew Omega. So it was with Omega Curtis Parker, Durham born, Durham raised, and Durham loved. Omega was a guide to all of us. She was quick to tell us that she didn't always live on Oakmont Avenue, Oakmont Circle. She was one of 13 children. In fact, she was number 12. But her mom and dad named her Omega, and you know Omega means last. Because she grew up as she grew up, she always understood equity. And so she knew that equity was not a noun, but a verb. And she fought for us to have an equity lens on every policy we brought forth from Durham Public Schools, especially for media specialists. She refused to let us call them librarians, but media specialists, media teachers. She expected us to always look at faculty and staff with an equity lens. She loved Durham Public Schools. That was evident in the fact that when she retired from her beloved Little River, she went back to substitute teaching, not back to it, but she started being a sub. Then when she got on the school board and retired from that, she went back to substitute teaching. In fact, we know that one of her day jobs was attending funerals. We used to always tease her about that was a day job, but she only did it when she didn't have to go sub. Omega subbed until she could no longer do it, and we honor her for that. I feel extremely honored to be sitting in this seat because this is Omega's seat. This is where Omega sat. And Omega, I want to let you know, because I know you have your iPad up there in heaven and you're taking pictures of us and you were very happy with the celebrations, but know that your colleagues here will continue to carry on the fight that you had for all children and all teachers, all staff in Durham Public Schools. We will continue, the queens will continue to be the queens that you were. And of course, we have a few kings. We're going to celebrate them as well. All right.
Thank you. And so with that, we do have a resolution honoring Omega Curtis Parker. We discussed it and we read it in our work session. However, we wanted to send it to our this meeting so that we can have it more publicized and have her family here. And so with us today, we have Mr. Quentin Parker and Miss LaQuinta Parker. Yeah, they're here with us, her husband and her daughter, for us to read this resolution. We will sign it. And where's Chip at? Yeah, I would like it to be framed and given to the Parkers, please. All right, so Minnie, I'll have you start it off, and we'll read it round robin as we usually do.
Resolution honoring Omega Curtis Parker. Whereas Omega Curtis Parker was born November 27th, 1936, and
whereas in 1954, Omega graduated from Hillside High School in Durham, North Carolina, and
whereas in 1958, Omega earned her Bachelor of Arts degree from North Carolina Central University, and
whereas in 1959, Omega earned her Master of Library Science degree from North Carolina Central University, and
whereas Omega delighted in working with students in Durham Public Schools for more than 30 years. She served as the esteemed media coordinator at Little River Elementary School before retiring in 2002. And
Whereas, after retirement, Omega began serving as a substitute teacher in Durham Public Schools. And
Whereas, in 2006, Omega was elected to the Durham Board of Education, and she faithfully served 2 terms until 2014. And
Whereas Omega was elected to the Durham, whereas Omega was a tireless advocate for the needs of students, educators, and media coordinators. And
Whereas Omega was a member of Durham Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and Durham Chapter of Charms, Progressive Sertoma Club International, Durham Delta Kappa Gamma Society, and Tau Gamma Delta Sorority Incorporated. And
Whereas Omega served as the 5th National President of Squaws Charms Incorporated and as President of the Durham Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated. And
Whereas Omega was a member of the National Education Association, the North Carolina Association of Educators, the North Carolina Librarians Association, the Durham County Teachers Association, the Durham County Association of Educators, Durham County Librarians Association, the Council of Urban Boards of Education, and the Student U Board of Directors. And
whereas Omega was a fantastic cook and shared her warm hospitality with countless friends, family, and community members. And
whereas Omega had a keen sense of fashion, including, most importantly, an impressive collection of hats, which she wore with unique style. And
whereas Omega continued serving as a dearly loved substitute teacher in Durham Public Schools well into her 80s. And
whereas Omega is survived by her husband of 62 years, John Quinton Parker, as well as their beloved children, Michael and Mary, and 4 grandchildren. And
whereas her children established the Omega Curtis Parker Scholarship Fund to support graduates of Durham Public Schools in their studies at North Carolina Central University. And
whereas on September 30th, 2019, Omega Curtis Parker died at the age of 82 in her beloved community of Durham, North Carolina. And
whereas friends and community members were asked to honor Omega's legacy with contributions to the Omega Curtis Parker Scholarship Fund to continue her support of Durham students.
therefore, be it resolved that the Durham Board of Education honors the life, leadership, and legacy of Omega Curtis Parker. This, the 24th day of October, 2019.
Let's get it approved.
I move that we approve this resolution
second.
for the life, legacy, and work of Omega Curtis Parker.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we approve, well, what Minnie said. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please use the same sign. It passes unanimously. Okay. That was excellent. The next item on our agenda comes from operating services.
we do
Oh,
consent.
consent. No, we did consent.
We have not consented to the consent.
Oh, man, I skipped right over that, didn't I? Oh, well. All right. Next item on our agenda is the consent items. What's your pleasure?
I move approval of the consent items.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded that we approve the consent items as listed, construction and capital planning change order reports, and contract for Northern High School Replacement Project Phase 2 survey services. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please use the same sign. It passes unanimously. Now, the next item on our agenda is the operating services.
Good evening. Tonight, we're going to talk about the student assignment and boundary planning recommendations for Creekside Elementary and Githens Middle School. I'm sorry.
And Mr. Monk, I apologize. I did throw that to you, and we do have a public comment for this item, and that is Susan Kinghorn. Yes, ma'am. I apologize, Mr. Monk. I did throw it to you.
Hi. Thank you. My name is Susan Kinghorn, and I have an 8th grade daughter at Githens and a 4th grade son at Forest View. I want to thank all of you for your hard work on this very difficult task. My husband and I are ardent supporters of DPS and public education, and we are so grateful for the experiences that our children have had. They both enrolled at Forest View in kindergarten, and that school community has become invaluable to them and to us as parents. I am here because we learned last week that our home, which sits just north of Cornwallis Road, is in the swath of land that is proposed to be newly assigned to Brogden. Ironically, I had heard a rumor a few weeks ago that all of Forest View might be assigned to Brogden, and that was completely fine with me because I knew that we would all be together. If that had been the proposed plan, I would not be standing here. Instead, I find myself one of a handful of Forest View families that would be affected by this plan. If this current proposal is accepted, my son will be separated from his larger Forest View community and all of his close friends for middle school. We will be separated from all of the neighborhoods that are right next to ours, just across Cornwallis Road, and the surrounding areas. We will lose the community that has become so precious to us. In the entire piece of land that is proposed to be reassigned, there are only a handful of Forest View families and that make up a total of 14 children across 6 grades. My son is the only child in his grade that would be reassigned. This means at best that 1 to 3 kids per school year would be subtracted from Githens and added to Brogden, and that does not factor in those that might choose magnets or other options. This is a negligible benefit for Githens, but it would be devastating for our family. Our daughter thrived in middle school because she started Githens with a large group of friends that anchored each other as they made new friends and navigated a new school and new rhythms. I know that one of your stated goals is to keep elementary school communities together for middle school. This is all I'm asking for my son. We live on Lanier Place, one street of 4 that sits on the north side of Cornwallis Road, right across from Colony Park. We are surrounded by Duke Forest and the Lemur Center, which backs up to our street. If you've not had time yet to drive out and look at this area, I invite you to do so. Please come and see how isolated our 4 streets would be from the surrounding neighborhoods. We would like to please ask that you keep the Githens-Brogden boundary where it currently is on Highway 751 west of 15501 between the Hillendale area and the Forest View area. If this cannot be done, we ask that you please draw a line around our 4 streets so that our family can remain part of our larger community as we look towards middle school for our son. That would mean the world to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Kinghorn. Okay. Now, Mr. Monk.
Good evening again.
Yeah.
All right. So tonight we're going to talk about the student assignment and boundary planning recommendations for Creekside Elementary and Githens Middle School. The main points that staff will be covering today is remembering the district strategic plan goal 5C that addresses the adequate classroom space for every student in DPS. Our presentation is going to focus on solutions for overcrowding at Creekside and Githens, both which are 200 plus students over their built capacity. And then we're going to discuss the details of the problems as well as the planning process and recommended solutions for both schools. So these are very complex problems, the overcrowding that we're experiencing at Creekside and Githens. You've already heard a couple of public comments that demonstrates just how complex this is because these are personal to our families. But tonight we want to share those problems with you in a little bit more detail. Mr. Palmer is going to share for you and the public what our planning process is so that we can be transparent with that. And then we're going to share our recommendations for the fall of 2020 and beyond. So as you can see from the map on the screen, there are several of our southern Durham schools that are currently overcrowded. We have Hope Valley, Forest View, and Creekside to the south. And then we have Glen that's to the northeast and Spring Valley to the southeast. This is a very targeted solution that we're presenting for 2020. We're only focusing on Creekside, even though, as I explained, that there are other schools that are also nearing or are also over capacity. But as a part of our strategic goal 5C, we said we're going to do that over the next couple of years as we move towards 2023. Matthew and I shared with the board in the summer, and we outlined our plan for having public fora, meeting with the board individually, as well in settings like this to discuss what kind of changes that we can make. All changes won't be like the one that we're going to discuss today, where it's a boundary adjustment. There'll also be discussions around magnet schools and other ways that we can address our student assignment issues. In the spring of 2019, there was a workshop held that was facilitated by Githens PTA, in which our families came out and expressed their concerns about the continued overcrowding at Githens and at Creekside, and at Jordan for that matter. We're here today because we heard those concerns, and we're ready to make a recommendation for at least a release of some of that pressure until we can get through the larger conversation. There is a statewide infrastructure deficit, which means that we are not able to build as many schools as we need. We have presented to this board the joint boards of County Commission and Education, in which we propose funding for the Northern High School, as well as Elementary School C and Elementary School F. If we keep growing at this pace, we will also need to secure funding for new middle schools as well as new high schools. We're blessed to have Northern High School moving on with design, but Jordan High School is another high school that has several mobile classrooms and is growing in their enrollment. Because there is a statewide infrastructure deficit, we have to work closely with our county commissioners to provide our funding source. That's where the majority of our funding sources come for capital and improvements. So in 2019, the enrollment at Creekside, we were 9 classrooms over the built capacity. And in 2020, we're projected to grow another 20 students plus. At this rate, simply adding mobile classrooms isn't enough. It may give us more instructional capacity, but it still won't address the issues that we're having in the cafeterias, where students are forced to eat earlier for longer periods of the day, and they're having shorter lunches. Beyond just the feeding, there's also music and arts, the other things that are important as parts of education. HB 90, and I know the board is aware of, but for those who aren't aware, is a state mandate that we lower class sizes. We understand the thought process behind lowering class sizes, but they also have fiscal and capital repercussions that are a part of it. And part of that is providing more classrooms for the same amount of students. We have been able to slowly bring our class sizes down. The state has allowed that, but in 2021, we're going to have to meet the class sizes for our K-3 mandates. Elementary schools in the adjacent area surrounding Creekside are also over capacity. Forest View is over capacity, Hope Valley is over capacity. There's only 1 or 2 that are in close proximity to Creekside's border that aren't over capacity. Here's that southwest corner of the county that we've been referring to. And we're proud tonight that we are growing both academically and in enrollment. That's a good thing for our county. With that growth, though, we're going to need to manage that. That's something that the county hasn't done for the past 20 or 30 years since the merger. And we're prepared tonight to start that journey with everyone. So just to recap our problems before we move on through the planning process, we're growing, which is good, but there's severe overcrowding at Creekside, 200 plus students. We have the North Carolina class size legislation, which is going to continue to decrease our K-3 seats. And then we also have adjacent schools that are growing, maybe not as fast and as long as Creekside has been doing, but they are also on the upswing. So with that, I'd like to pass it on to Mr. Palmer so he can walk through the planning process and then present to you our recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Monk, and good evening all, members of the board, Superintendent Mbenga. It's good to see everyone. We're going to really take a moment to walk through what is planning and why do we plan. And from a public perception, I think it's very important that we really take a moment and pause and acknowledge that the path that we're on as a district and through the leadership of the board allows for us to take a moment and really make sure everyone understands the problems. If there are debates about solutions, that's a separate conversation, but we cannot have a mismatch of debates about what the problems are. So tonight, we'll take a moment and walk you through that planning process, ensure that everyone is understanding of what we're trying to address, how we go about addressing it, and then what solutions might be at our disposal. So, broadly speaking, planning is a problem-solving process. When we have a problem, we need to use all of the information that's available, and that includes both numbers, the quantitative data element to it, but also perspective, experience, and truthfully, stories, right? Qualitative data information is equally important as well. So we bring the data together in this process, which we've done with you all over the past few months. This conversation initially started back in July and has evolved progressively as we've tried to address it. The objective here is to derive a shared understanding of the problem and then be able to identify viable solutions once we've done so. When we have a scenario like Creekside, as well as with Githens, where in both instances we're over 200 students beyond the built capacity of the campuses, at that point we really need to step back and look at why is that happening, but also what can we do? So to that end, particularly with respect to Creekside, all of the mobile classrooms are maxed out. We cannot bring additional mobile classrooms onto the campus. Dr. Kramer has had to go through extraordinary measures to service students 250 beyond what her school was designed to actually service. So to that point, she's having to do things like extend food service periods during lunch, starting earlier in the morning and going later into the afternoon. Having to, rather than offering a special once every 5 days to her students, it's oftentimes once every 8 days. So those are the type of scenarios when we're dealing with overcrowding that roll over into instructional quality as well. In addition, not only are we unable to add additional mobiles, all of the classrooms that could be converted into classrooms that might have been originally intended for another use, those conversions have taken place. And so, as we look forward to the full implementation of HB 90, again, that's ratcheting down our class level sizes year by year. Principal Kramer has to consider the possibility of putting multiple teachers in one room. So it is at that point that administration has requested that Mr. Monk and I go through the process of identifying solutions in coordination with the board. It necessitates a deeper conversation, not only amongst those in the room tonight, but as you'll see, the process that we've taken with the community as well. With respect to community engagement, that's an important concept to just pay attention to. We have designed our public forum specifically going to the communities that would be impacted by the proposed recommendations that we're sharing with you this evening. On October 14th, we presented at Lakewood Elementary with respect to really trying to ensure that Lakewood parents were able to access the information in their school and their community because it would affect rising sixth graders from Lakewood. On October 15th, we attended Jordan High School and invited Creekside parents to attend so that they could also understand the problem and the challenges that we were trying to address. On October 17th, we had a companion presentation at Spalding Elementary, again focusing on rising sixth graders at Spalding. And this past Monday, on October 21st, we had a wraparound session also at Jordan. In each of these events, we've wanted to engage with respect, provide childcare at each of those events, make them transit accessible when possible, ensure that we had translation services available, and that ultimately the location of the events themselves were in the communities and not either here at 511 Cleveland Street or another location. Similarly, we've been listening to understand, and that's a bi-directional communication going both ways, so that as ideas are coming forth, we're taking that down. And through that, we can build trust in the planning process. One of our core objectives with this project is to build trust amongst the board, administration, staff, our parents, our principals, and our community so that they understand when we have problems, how do we solve them? What's that process? And if we do that, we lay the foundation to ignite the limitless potential that is Durham Public Schools. So with that, I'd like to invite up for just one moment Dr. Patricia Hollingsworth, our Director of Community Engagement. She's going to just give you an overview of the community engagement events themselves.
So in addition to what Matthew just shared with you, we also had feedback from our parents, and we answered questions, and we provided surveys both digitally and hard copies as well. We had a total of approximately 200 attendees. Of those attendees, 136 were parents. The others, of course, included our board members, our administrators, and of course, other educators. All of the information that was shared is now on the DPS website. So we did create a website link so that you may go there and create and look at all the PowerPoint presentations, and anything and any information and resources that we have going forward will be added to this particular link. Lastly, our committee would like to thank all of the departments and their hard work, our parents for their engagement. We did see every single one of our board members and our superintendent at our 4 community engagement activities. And so as we continue this initial phase of student assignment and boundary planning, know that we are going to need the help of everyone in this room and the broader Durham community. Thank you.
I know I'm not in a position to hand out spark pins myself, but I would like to acknowledge that Dr. Hollingsworth has joined us only 1 month ago and took point on these workshops. And I just wanted to say thank you so much. With respect to her comments in the larger community sense, this is a partnership between the district leadership and our parent community. When we talk about changes to any boundary for any family, whether it's 1 child or 100, we recognize that is a decision that impacts each family, and we do not take any of these matters lightly. As we look to strengthen that partnership with parents, we do also call out and suggest that this is also an opportunity for parents to help us as leaders as well. As we look at Creekside in this next forthcoming scenario that we'll be discussing, we recognize that what we're proposing will have effect for fall of 2020, and we'll need parents to help shepherd those students into a new school community who Principal Anna Rasconi has already shared that they're ready with open arms. In addition, it is our hope that those students also are able to be really the opening class there at what we've been calling Elementary School Site C. So those students, some of them which may actually end up attending Creekside, Parkwood, and a new school. Now, one of the questions that we've been getting is, would students be able to stay along at Parkwood? And to that point, we've suggested that to be consistent with the way that we've addressed Creekside, it would make sense, but that's a conversation to forthcome. If we can do this collectively and together, we demonstrate that Durham is a community of leaders that can solve problems together. And in so doing, sets a template moving forward. Here in the Triangle, these are challenges that many of our districts are facing. In the state of North Carolina as well. And really in the Southeast US, which is experiencing unprecedented growth and urbanization. So the challenges that we're tackling in this room are, unfortunately, not only about this room, they're really something we're facing nationally as well. Now, we might have our own Durham solutions to it, and that's what tonight's about. I would ask everyone to just pause and reflect on this quote. I think it really speaks to the moment. With student assignment and boundary planning, there are no straight lines. We recognize that. It may look easy in an Excel table, but it is not easy when it comes to the real-world solutions. And we take that very seriously. We get a lot of feedback from parents and even colleagues suggesting, well, what about this and that? And it's our job to bring all of that in. And as we have come to say, yes, that's true, and ... Right? It's always a little bit more complex. The numbers on this table are not what I would ask that you focus on, but what we wanted to show is that when we look at overcrowding at Creekside, we'd ask the question, will that decline in a set number of years? As we look over a 10-year horizon, we see the intensity of development in Southwest Durham only increasing. There continue to be parcels of land for sale directly adjacent to the Creekside school site, including a development going in across the street. When the Creekside boundary was originally drawn, many of those folks and many of those homes were not in Durham. They are now, and that's what this exercise is about. So ultimately, a boundary plan should look to balance enrollment with capacity. When possible, improve our transportation efficiency and level of service, those ride times for our students, and also be mindful of the feeder patterns, elementary to middle to high. So we've reviewed the problems that we're facing, the process that we undertake, and the solutions now are forthcoming. In short, we have both a near-term solution and a much more sustainable long-term solution. The near-term solution is looking for the next 2 years to bridge us to the point where the new elementary school is available along Scott King Road. This is a rendering of what we call Elementary School Site C. With respect to its status and progress, we have 100% of our construction drawing is complete, and our site plan that you see here has already been approved by the City County Planning Department. What that means is that this school is shovel ready. What it awaits is the funding in order to proceed. Not only with respect to Elementary School C, but also with F. We've shared this information with you previously, what that can do for us, not only about balancing utilization, but also staying within the court order mandates for class size and beginning to look at how we could have more distributed pre-K. So we see these two schools as central to a much larger picture. In doing so, it would provide direct relief to some of our most overcrowded facilities, Creekside, Southwest, and Hope Valley, and in addition, a systems level relief, really going across from the western edge of the county all the way over to Spring Valley and Glen, where there's growth there as well.
Just for note, could you explain where Site F is?
Yes.
I think we've talked about Site C, but just for those who might not know.
Thank you for, Site F is located right off of the intersection with Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway, as well as Boulevard, as well as South Roxborough Street. So right at MLK and Roxborough. It's about 33 acres, and we project, because of its location, that we can have about 800 students there, which would really be a central pin amongst really what are 6 overcrowded schools. So strategically, it is right in the heart of the district. So with respect to our near-term solutions, these are the current boundaries you see for Creekside in the red and Parkwood in the blue. As far as we're aware, we've gone through the archives. These were the original boundaries when Creekside opened. Now, presently, Parkwood does have some limited available capacity to bring on additional students. It itself is going through its own growth and revitalization. The kindergarten class this year at Parkwood is 110 students. Comparatively, the fourth grade class is about 80 students. So you can see that we're getting more school-age families in that area. In addition, the eastern edge of Creekside's boundary is actually significantly closer to Parkwood than it is to Creekside. It's about 2 miles from the center of the Fairfield neighborhood over to Parkwood, and it's about 8 miles from there over to Creekside. So in the net, it's 6 miles closer to Parkwood at a school that has available seats. This elliptical that you see in the southern portion of the map shows you where we're looking at from a focused area perspective. And this is zooming in a little bit and allow me to walk you through what the lines mean. The red line that you see there is the designated boundary currently between Hillside and Jordan High School. And that's not a part of this conversation tonight. The yellow line that you see is the boundary between Githens and Lowe's Grove. What you'll notice if you follow that yellow line down is that it dovetails over a portion of the salmon-colored polygon. That is the Creekside boundary. So there's a portion of Creekside students presently that are boundaried for Creekside Elementary and then boundaried for Lowe's Grove Middle School. So that was a starting point for us, was to look at that and say, were we to bring those in alignment, what might that mean for overall enrollment at the schools? So we focused on the Herndon Road corridor running down to the Scott King Road intersection. We see that as a location of strategic importance because immediately across the way from those neighborhoods is the land that is the 45 acres that we have earmarked for elementary school Site C. We've proposed at this point that current third and fourth graders that are at Creekside are allowed to finish through and that they are linked with siblings as well. We project at this point that's about 50 students that we're talking about. We'll walk you through what those numbers actually look like and mean. It's just a Google map image of the driving directions if you were going from one neighborhood, if you're going from one neighborhood to Creekside Elementary versus one neighborhood to Parkwood. Again, about a 6-mile difference in the two scenarios. This is a summary slide that shows you the actual fall of 2020 implications, and you can see that drawdown of about 50 students. In the net, those 50 students would save us 6 miles per trip per day over the year. That's 220,000 miles, about 18,000 hours of student time actually saved. In addition, it would align Parkwood with the Lowe's Grove boundary so that there's a clean feeder from Parkwood into Lowe's Grove. To reiterate again, this portion of our recommendation is not addressing the existing middle school boundaries for Lowe's Grove or Githens or Hillside and Jordan. It's really just about Creekside and Parkwood. And in addition, we will be enhancing academic and instructional support, as well as operational support for Parkwood to assist with the increase in enrollment. I apologize for the granularity of this data, but we wanted to share the race and ethnicity implications as well. As is noted, this presentation is available online also. But generally speaking, this is analysis that we wanted to produce proactively so that it was in your hands as you review the proposal. So in summary, we're looking at this purple adjustment area shape that you see as we move from the existing boundary that is in the upper left-hand corner of the slide to the right. And this is what that actual new shape would look like in according. Before we, it sounds like a question?
Yeah. You could finish your call for questions. Could we go back to slide 68 just for a second, the projected race and ethnicity, and just hang on this for a second? And I don't know if those at home, especially because we've got you and the slide together.
And see why that's,
But the proposed changes, I mean, the largest I see is in the 4% range. And most of them are in the 2% or less. So I just kind of wanted to call that out, and I know we'll have the same data for the middle school as well. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, while we're on that point, it is the first year's projection, right? And if those shifts are going, you would expect some
matriculation as we go through over time.
I was looking at my math teacher board colleagues, and I wanted to say exponential, but it wasn't. But you would see
You're right.
It's not a linear change, right? I mean, I don't know.
Well, it might be considered a stepwise change, is that what
Yeah,
you're?
there you go.
Okay.
That's, yeah. So, but this is year one.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And
And one of the important things here is that we can neither control nor 100% project the decisions of each individual family. We recognize that. So it would be a misrepresentation to say this is what it will look like in 5 years or 10 years. We were really focused on, for this fall, what might it look like?
Just thank you for being proactive and anticipating this. Appreciate it.
Jump in correctly. A couple of questions. One, this is concerning the current situation with the extra lunches, the early lunches and so forth. What kind of impact has that had on school nutrition? Or is it just a matter of adding more bodies?
Right, so it's adding more lunches and then having shorter lunch time.
I'm talking about the staff.
The staff, yeah, it's just more bodies.
Okay.
Yeah, just to get them through.
Okay.
Correct.
What is our current answer to that parent who says, my child's gonna start at Creekside, go to Parkwood, and then go to elementary school C? Do they currently have the option to stay at Parkwood if they wanted to, or is that a question that has yet to be answered? I'm trying to remember. Is that a policy question, or have we already maintained that that's, if they want to stay at Parkwood, to eliminate having a second move? Have we already told them that's the case? Because we're getting emails, and I thought we talked about that.
It's been a part of each of our presentations that it would be our recommendation to the board that those that attend Parkwood from Creekside would be allowed to finish through at Parkwood if they so chose. That is ultimately a board decision that would be part of our larger consideration. So we weren't in a position to commit as much as we were to recommend.
Absolutely. That's why I'm put that out there, make it clear. Elementary school C, that shovel-ready school, that predated my time on the board. That map, all those plans were drawn before I got here in 2016, is that correct? So knowing how great you guys are, I'm assuming that we know that there's no kind of state regulations that have come on since those drawings that would cause us to go back and say, oops, let's change, add, adjust.
So we have had conversations with the designer about making code updates.
Exactly.
So
I
that-
said wrong word, code,
Yeah.
so I was talking about
That's
yes.
right. And so that would be a part of the process, but it's not as extended as period as if you were designing a school from scratch. You were literally just updating. If there was a change in electrical code, they do whatever they need to do, and then we'll be ready to put it out on the street.
Because you're just that good. That's what I thought. Thank you.
I just speak for myself. The reason why we're not asking questions is we all went to these sessions and asked our questions and saw the answers. So I'm not feeling the need to repeat all that. I'm very appreciative of what you've done so far.
Thank you. Thank you. And moving along to an additional school that is also facing capacity challenges with its enrollment. As Mr. Monk alluded to, we're all aware of the sessions that were held back in the spring of 2019 with respect to overcrowding that was commissioned by the Githens PTA. And it was one of the very first things that Dr. Mbanga asked us to look at was what might be possible with Githens overcrowding and what solutions are at our disposal. This is a larger image of the middle school map for all of Durham. And it may seem like a footnote, but I think it takes processing just for a moment to focus on the size of the boundaries with respect to the names and the locations of the schools. You'll note that Githens is about a quarter of the county, and Lucas appears to be almost half of it. Brogdon is notably the smallest of the boundaries that we have. So just to kind of put the conversation in context. So, Mr. Monk, I believe.
So as I noted before, we really haven't changed those boundaries that we just saw on the map since the district merged in 1992-93. which has left us with Githens being about 250 students over their built capacity, Brogden being 300 plus students under, and Carrollton being 300 plus under. When these maps was first drawn, the Brogden boundary was a more densely populated area, and then the Githens area was woods. But now those are homes there with families and with children. In 2019, Githens had over 1,100 students enrolled, which placed them 10 classrooms over their built capacity. Now, how we calculate capacity is similar to how we do elementary schools, but the difference is for our middle schools, we use 25 students per classroom, per instructional classroom. These classrooms don't include art and music and band or any of our CTE type classrooms. These are strictly our core classrooms. So when we look at Githens, they have 36 classrooms. When you multiply that by the 25 students, then they have a capacity of 900 students or seats for instructional space. We use the DPI guidelines to get an idea about how many students we can seat in our cafeteria to calculate our core. And we use the cafeteria space primarily because it's the one area in the school that you really have the opportunity for every single student to use every single day. So using DPI's guidelines, you take the square footage of the dining space, which in Githens' case is 4,068 square feet, divided by 14 square feet per student, and multiply it by 3 lunches, and you get 872 students. As you can see, that's almost 300 students more enrolled than you have space to stay within those DPI guidelines. Yes, they're guidelines, but you know, people work very hard to come up with a way to calculate this, again, to maximize the amount of time that we're giving our students to have instruction. So with the limited core capacity and no real room to add additional classrooms or instructional capacity, we have to do something at Githens. Here are the schools, the elementary schools that feed Githens, and you'll see a noticeable pattern here. And that is those schools are also overcrowded, and they're some of our larger elementary schools. As a matter of fact, 5 of those elementary schools are over capacity. And those areas are still continuing to grow. You see the development signs popping up almost every day, it seems. So we have a chronic, severe overcrowding problem at Githens, and it's getting worse. We don't have room for additional core capacity or for additional instructional capacity. And one of the solutions that we want to talk about is how do we reduce our enrollment numbers, at least for this upcoming school year. And then again, we will revisit district-wide a more comprehensive plan beginning in January 2020. So now that Matthew's had an opportunity to rest his voice a little bit, I'm going to call him back up so he can walk us through the planning process for Githens.
Thank you. We've been on the road tour a little bit, so it's good to get a moment of relief. The planning process here is similar. The overcrowding themes that we're seeing in Southwest Durham really necessitate us to exhaust all of our remedies before we start looking at boundaries. And in Githens, the case is similar as at Creekside. We cannot add additional mobiles on campus because of the reason Mr. Monk noted. We're beyond our core capacity. In addition, we've converted available spaces, and at this point, the Githens campus as a whole needs help with respect to the number of students that attend. That leads us to a deeper conversation. Again, as we talked about previously, the numbers on this table aren't so important as it is recognizing that when you see the line Sherwood-Githens and you go from left to right over the next decade, it gets a deeper red. I would also draw your eye, and Mr. Monk alluded to this earlier also, Lowe's Grove and Neal are also going to be dealing with capacity issues moving forward. This is not unique just to Githens. We need to keep our eye on the ball with respect to Southern Durham in the middle school level, in addition to the elementary school level. But notably, we do have capacity to the north. Presently, both Brogden and Carrington have over 300 available seats in each of those schools. So, as with the planning process, just staying consistent on the boundary planning checks here, we're looking to balance enrollment, improve transportation, and consider our feeder patterns. So the solutions available at our disposal really do have to do with the boundary plan update for the fall of 2020. Now, when we initially looked at that, there were two possibilities, either looking to the north or looking to the east. Looking to the east with respect to the Githens-Lowe's Grove boundary, we noted earlier, there is some temporary capacity at Lowe's Grove, but moving forward, that is also projected to have its own capacity challenges. The southern Durham area is a high projected growth area. To the north, as noted, Brogden has over 300 available seats, and presently, because of the size of its boundary, we don't project additional growth at this time. So that's a relatively stable number to work with. So to look at our recommended solution, we've identified the Cornwallis corridor leading from the intersection with Fayetteville Street going west to the Orange County line. One of the reasons we looked at that spatially was to suggest if there's a naturally occurring boundary with respect to Cornwallis, and if we're looking on both sides of it and we're equally thoughtful of the communities going really throughout Durham, right? We were very intentional about recognizing that this was urban, suburban, and rural, and equally distributive at that. That was one of the main things that we were focused on. We can phase that in by cohort by year, about 100 students each year. Typically, Lakewood is graduating about 60 students and Spalding about 40. So together that's 100 annually. The present students that are at Githens and Brogden would stay in our recommended plan at their present school so they could finish through the school that they're at. This would really just be for our rising sixth graders. Notably, that doesn't help Githens all the way immediately. We recognize that, but these plans take a moment to take effect. It's a phase-in process. This next series of slides just shows you the existing feeder patterns and the school boundaries that we're talking about with respect first to Lakewood, second with respect to Spalding, and third with respect to Forest View. And I will note with Forest View particularly, nearly half of Forest View students already attend Brogden. There's a sizable portion of Forest View students that live right along the 15501 corridor. So I would suggest again to be mindful that Forest View is already in a significant portion of its student population attends Brogden. This is just aligning it along a naturally occurring boundary with respect to Cornwallis. So the implications for this, you can see it would, presently there are 6 schools that feed into Githens. This would draw that down to 4. And then presently there are 3 schools that feed into Brogden, and this would increase it to 5. The neighborhoods that would be impacted by this adjustment are listed here. Just want to be thoughtful about which communities that we were looking at. And then think about what is the travel distance implications as well. Again, we've looked at enrollment and capacity, but have we looked at transportation and our feeder patterns? Here we've got the Lakewood to Githens distance is about 4.4 miles, and we can save a bit on that by looking to Brogden. And for Spalding, it's over 1.6 miles difference from Spalding up to Brogden versus Spalding all the way over to Githens. So operationally and from a transportation perspective, we can save distance and time for our students. We project that's over 50,000 miles a year for students traveling and about 2,000 hours. As we look at the phase-in process, you see the reduction in Githens enrollment there from 1,100 this year to at the end of 2022, we're looking at about 897. Similarly, we're seeing an increase or escalation in enrollment at Brogden to fully utilize the campus as we get to 2022 of about 794 students. So really, since they have the same size core capacities, we'd be balancing those out. As with Creekside, we wanted to go ahead and proactively look at, for fall of 2020, what would be the projected implications for race and ethnicity. With respect to the granularity or the resolution on the data, let me just share that each of these percentages are within about 1% either way. And that was one of the considerations that we made as well. In summary, the boundary recommendations, you see the existing boundary on the left, and you'll note that sort of V formation that exists presently. It would smooth that out and have a Cornwallis corridor that is uniform from Fayetteville to the Orange County line. Is my time up?
I appreciate your speeding
Just
up
go
the
to the camera.
process. My goodness.
Go to the camera.
Hypnotizing me.
You just continue on. It's AV. It's just an AV issue. You just continue forward.
Okay.
Do you
Pretty
have?
helpful.
Yeah. No, it's in the back.
Okay. For those following along on,
Hold on one second.
it is, okay.
While he's taking care of that, if I might,
Yes.
I
yes,
just
go ahead.
want to speak to something that has, another thing that has changed since I got on the board. When I was even thinking about running for office, the Durham Herald Sun education reporter said, hey, let's just talk. I hear you're thinking about it. Can we just informally talk? And I bring that up to say that that position is no longer here. Durham Herald Sun was bought out by the company that owns News and Observer. Getting regular newspaper coverage for our forums and even these meetings sometimes doesn't happen. These meetings are, I'm just saying this for our board and staff especially, sometimes the only data point where people can find out what's going on because it's not in the papers. The last time I looked at the education link on the News and Observer / Herald Sun website, it was literally blank with an ad, as if nothing is happening. And so I just want to say that because when I asked questions that were asked previously, those forums weren't recorded, and I didn't see a reporter there. And sometimes this is all our public has. And I know parents that go back and look through these on YouTube. I don't know what else they have to do. But I just want to say that even since the time I've been on the board, the force and power of what the newspaper used to do for communities is gone or going. And we need to let the public know what's happening while we're being filmed. So I just want to put that out there. That's why I ask these questions.
I'll be watching this tomorrow with my kids on YouTube, so they want to know where I am all the time. And so thank you for mentioning that as well, because I do believe that I recognize this is a lot of information in one evening, and it's a large presentation. But we felt like taking the time to walk folks through. We have had over 100 attendees at our public fora. We have gone to 4 different events to share this information, but this is our archive, an opportunity to share how we go about doing it. So the timeline you see here, these are the public forums that we've had over the last few weeks. The recommendations we're sharing with you this evening, and that situates you on the time frame with respect to the information that we're sharing, to really make decisions as we go through this process, from recommendations to the decisions that the board will ultimately need to consider. The public hearing that we're looking at, we would recommend, if the recommendation suits your preferences, a public hearing could happen as soon as the following working meeting, which would give you an opportunity to have folks come and speak to the proposal. Similarly, that November 12th date, the joint Board of Education, Board of County Commissioners meeting. Now, that was our understanding that is the date for the joint session, but it would.
The 12th. That's
It
correct.
is the 12th. Okay. So, one of the topics that's been coming up from parents as they've received our information is, what can I do, and can we come to that meeting? So, that's been a dominant theme in the workshops. So with that, we've walked you through our proposal. We wanted to leave time for questions, clarifications, anything to that effect.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So I appreciate the tremendous amount of data and thoughtfulness, and I thought the community forums were a great place to ask questions and get questions answered, and there were a lot of excellent questions. We've had excellent questions added tonight. And it is incredibly complex. And part of the conversation tonight, board, sparked me to pull up something that we had seen, I think, like 5 years ago, and then Mr. Palmer sent a few months ago when I asked for it, and that's the where are kids zoned for and where do they actually end up going. And that's data that's a part of this. So I want to speak to like the Githens-Brogdon piece because I'm in the zone. I'm a proud Lakewood parent, and my possible middle school will be changing. And that's cool. I'm good with that. And I'll just speak to that. Why am I good with it? Because I've met the principal. I've talked with the district about the direction the school is on, and I'm confident that it's a place where teaching and learning is going. I'm going to go to the school, check it out. So I'm good with it. But I also want to frame, kind of looking at this data, and remind board, I think you know this, but I consider Spalding and Lakewood to be opt-out schools. Given the numbers of kids that are zoned for that school and do not attend, 20, 30%. Spalding's complex because they have a walk zone Montessori, but I think we know what that does. Moorhead Montessori is a walk zone within the Spalding zone, and we end up with very different schools. So when we're talking about middle school matriculation, that adds complexity to it. When schools that are in the most diverse census tract in Durham, the Lakewood zone is the most diverse, about a third, and you get a school that's until recently been near 100% poverty and 100% students of color. And then we're talking about going to middle school. That's different. It used to be students left or DPS, right, for middle school, and then they came back to us for high school. I think some of the work that this district has done is changing that, especially for Githens. So I'm agreeing with our community that it is incredibly complex, but there's also issues of race and choice at the elementary level. So to just simplify this down to, these are the kids that are at Spalding and Lakewood, and that means when they move, that's going to make Brogdon less diverse, and also Githens less diverse, I think is an oversimplification. And it doesn't scare me that much because we've had this flight from these two schools in particular. So just wanted to raise that. Thanks.
Anyone else? Natalie?
Well, I want to start with thanking the whole team for the tremendous amount of work and the detail that goes into layer by layer, school by school, grade by grade that got us to this point. And I don't know whether to start with my big questions or my small questions. I guess, like Matt, I know our district is the most complex district in the state because of the choices that we offer and the choices that people avail themselves to. But I also know what can't we use as a proxy for creating schools that look like our community race? I'm looking at Mr. Sue to tell me and we can't use socioeconomic, but I mean, how do we talk about the values that we have that are equity, that are going to guide this work, and what tools do we have at our disposal to maximize making every school, as much as possible, look like our community? I don't know what we have at our disposal in our toolbox that is legitimate as we share that goal. Do you?
I believe you can do it on socioeconomics. You can't do it at race.
Right.
In terms of, I mean, isn't that what came out of Washington State?
What came out of Wake County with Bill McNeil.
Ken. Yeah.
It's complicated.
Thanks for sharing, Ken.
The simplest thing is that you can't use free and reduced price lunch data to assess anything other than eligibility for that program without individual parental consent. So you're not allowed to use that data except for certain things, and what we're talking about here, according to both the State Department and the U.S. Department of Agriculture, doesn't fall in that category. So if you're going to assess diversity from socioeconomic status, for needs, the healthy schools model that Wake County followed, you've got to come up with some other metric. For race, there have been a couple of federal appeals court decisions since the parents involved case that was a combination of individually considering the race of students in a student assignment program in both Louisville and in Seattle. And you had 4 members of a court that has become, most people would say, more conservative, saying that it doesn't appear that there is any compelling government interest that would be served by a race alone objective. So when you have a student assignment plan or anything else that makes distinctions between different groups of people, you're talking about the Equal Protection Clause, and if you are making a decision based on race explicitly, you have to have something that's narrowly tailored to a compelling government interest. And you've got Chief Justice Roberts and probably a bunch more justices on the court who'd say that it's going to be very hard to make that case for race alone. So an example, and stop me if you don't want to hear any more. Keep going, okay. So one comparison that in the parents involved case the court said was in the higher education context, where they said in this so 2 places where there is a compelling interest would be when you're under a court order to remedy past de facto and de jure segregation. And we all recognize, as in the dicta in the Freeman versus Pitts case, which was the Gwinnett County case in which Justice Kennedy said a district doesn't have an obligation to remedy demographic patterns by an aggressive assignment plan. That the history of this country is a stubborn fact, but that doesn't align with the necessarily obligations of the law. So in the higher ed context, the court said the other context in which you might have a compelling interest is if you considered race as one plus factor in an individualized consideration of each student, in that case, in admission to the University of Michigan School of Law. So we're considering this whole range of characteristics of applicants, each individual applicant, and one of the factors that we will consider is that person's race. And the Supreme Court said, that's okay. So when you get to student assignment, you have another problem. The cases that have come up saying individual consideration of students, whether it be a racial preference and magnet assignment, depending on whether the given school is within the diversity boundaries that a school has set, that's not going to work. So in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg case, in parents involved, that was, you cannot do that kind of individual, because of what group you're in, you get to do this, and because of what group you're in, you don't get to do this. So then we come back to the broader things, considering neighborhoods, considering trends and that sort of thing. And as I said, you're going to have a problem if you start saying this neighborhood is predominantly of one race or the other. We need that in here. We're going to go down and find a little place. So when we've had assignment that in the 2 cases, and their context is not quite what we're talking about here, but in the 2 federal appeals court cases that have come along since parents involved, they've said if race is considered, in other words, if you're conscious of race while you're putting together a plan that is based, for example, on operational characteristics, what school is crowded, what school is not crowded, where people are, where growth is going to be, and you're conscious of race, and you have options, and one option looks a little better on a race line than another, and you say, well, this plan was designed around operational needs. Version B is somewhat better in some of these areas that we're concerned about. I think you're going to be fine. If you say to administration, we're setting parameters that we expect you to meet of diversity at each school, and you're going to need to extend the parameters of your algorithm so it reaches out and gets farther and farther away neighborhoods to make that happen, you're going to be getting into dangerous territory in terms of a challenge, potential challenge. So that was a very broad overview, but the safest ground is we are conscious of the impact. And if there's something along the way that will work out to help improve not just purely race, but socioeconomic diversity and everything else, then we can go for that or the other. But this is part of a plan that is designed to meet operational needs. That is from the point of view of a challenge in United States District Court, that is where you are going to be the strongest.
All right, everybody clear on that?
Absolutely.
All right.
Well, it's helpful because it is incredibly complex. But also, unless I'm wrong, it sounds like gerrymandering is more okay than fixing schools to look like our community. I mean, by recent court cases. I mean, that's frustrating to me that you're saying that we really need the operational thing first, and then if an option amplifies the goal of equity and diversity, then we can do it at that sub-level?
So the question that I'm trying to answer is from a legal point of view, what puts you at most risk? And the more you, it's interesting that you raise gerrymandering, because in the cases that have addressed certain kinds of gerrymandering, those have been used to analyze some of these school assignment things. And one of the two cases I'm talking about that says a sign that there is some intent other than, that may be more purely racial, that may violate the Equal Protection Clause, which says you can't discriminate based on certain protected classifications, race being one of them. It says if it looks bizarre, if it doesn't look, cohesive, if it doesn't match up with geographical or other boundaries, those are signs that you've got something else, not just on your mind, but in terms of how you're treating different groups of people according to race or whatever other protected classification.
So let's say we had a situation where there was a very well-intended and close to perfect diversity situation where the elementary schools were pretty good shape, and then we look at school feeder patterns. Is the concept of, and we heard it today in the public comment, concept of keeping school communities together, would that be considered operational or going beyond operational?
Well, so I get caught up in buzzwords like everybody else does. The operational things I was thinking about were, yeah, I suppose it's a functional thing. So there are reasons to keep school communities together, or there's a theory that might be a beneficial thing. And when you make your decision based on those kinds of factors, we talked about the level of scrutiny that you're going to face. If you aren't prioritizing race, it's going to be along the lines of rationally related to a legitimate government interest. So when you use race as a specific factor, narrowly tailored, your most narrow option to accomplish a compelling government interest, and there aren't that many compelling government interests. At the level you're talking about, operational goals, it doesn't make any sense at all, basically, is the standard. So if you decided, one byword is neighborhood schools, that carries a whole lot of baggage, but I mean, is it a great idea? Is it a bad idea? The court's not going to look too carefully at that kind of decision. We want to set feeder patterns. That's going to be a legitimate way to adjust boundaries.
Thank you.
I wanted to see if anybody had anything on that topic before I go to a completely different topic and I come back and watch Mr. Sue's comments tomorrow.
I just want to know if that was a small question or a big question.
I think that was the big.
Okay.
I think that's the big one.
Big, 'cause if that was a small question, I was going to check my watch.
That's the mind-blowing, but I mean, I think when community members reflect to us that they want our schools to look like our community with that diversity in every building, if we could do it, I think that's a goal that is shared by this board and by this staff. I just gonna have to ponder through kind of how we do that.
Just because I think there's so rare a chance to actually talk about that, I don't hear that from the community, and I don't see it in how people make choices. I see people are comfortable with their level of diversity and are not willing to accept a diversity that looks like, I'll just read the numbers, 18% white, 25% Latino, 50% black. But that's not everybody's standard. I'm just making a statement.
No. I think that's an important statement. But you're talking also choices that people make that are above and beyond how we draw these base boundaries, right? And if we had base high school boundaries, there's a reason we drew Lucas the way we did. Is my example of that more recent boundary that we drew. That was my big question. Let me go little ones, or I can toss it to somebody else for some little ones. What are you all thinking about the survey feedback that's coming in, and how we're going to receive it, and how we're going to share it with the public? What happens with, you said people are starting to give feedback in that way?
Great question. And mind you, there's a public hearing that would need to companion this proposal, which will in itself be an opportunity for folks to come here in advance of the work session and share their perspective as well. What we would like to do is go through the survey responses that we've received, digitize the paper ones that are not currently digital. I was disappointed we had a QR code and no one did it. But that's okay. It's all right. We move on. So to not only to your question, we need to put that into a report. So that it's available in a PDF format and folks can see the thematic areas of emphasis. I don't think it's appropriate for me to try to summarize the comments of 100 parents. I don't think we can do that tonight, but certainly we can produce that document and have it for you.
And then I've been impressed by families that have come out and how we tried to reach out and call everyone that was impacted. But I just still don't feel that we've seen everybody that will be impacted by these changes. So I'm struggling with if there's a way to mail to those households and these addresses that, to let them know before we have this public hearing, or some other way for us to reach out, because it's not just the children, the families that are already engaged in Durham Public Schools that will be impacted. So I'd appreciate, as y'all think through kind of how we can make sure that the people that we haven't heard from are welcomed into that space.
I say the people you're talking about right now are in what I was just talking about as those school communities. They are in those school communities, correct? Lakewood.
Unless they don't have kindergartners, right? And unless they're not school age, or we had good participation at 4 forums, but we didn't have every family that's going to be impacted. I didn't feel that level of
I'm just saying that we could target those schools if you're trying to get more information. It's not a big district-wide thing as much as it is targeting to reach who you're talking about, those 4 schools.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking those adjustment zone addresses even. I don't know, yeah.
So the outreach effort for inviting people to the forums was pretty exhaustive of the traditional invitation methods. We sent flyers to students at all of the affected schools. We sent individual robocalls in English and Spanish to every household, and especially was really grateful for, based in part on feedback from board members, Principal Hopkins, Principal Carr, their staffs made individual entreaties to their school communities as well, and it is illustrative and helpful in focusing us, especially when it comes to the bigger project ahead over the next couple of years, that just because you provide a sincere invitation, that not everybody is going to feel welcome. and that some people are going to be more responsive than others and more vocal than others. So all of these are very important. However, we are going to mail following the presentation and giving this plan to you, we are going to mail in English and Spanish flyers to the households, or send them through the school communities, letting them know, specifically, the school board has been presented a proposal. Students in this area under this proposal would attend Githens, Brogdon. These are the avenues that you have to share further feedback with us. So we're going to provide further communication for people who did not feel that they wanted to come to a forum. We're going to, and we're going to provide even more robust outreach moving forward through a combination of methods. We're utilizing an outside portal company called Bang the Table that does community engagement that we're going to use. Yeah, that's truth in advertising as far as the name is concerned. But we're going to use that. We're going to use this portal to do a couple of things. We're going to allow a robust online give and take between community members with the provision of up-to-date information from us. And we're also going to use that as a basis for providing community organization materials for ground level people so that we can go out to communities and address the digital divide. So your points are well taken about the makeup of the community forums. We heard from a lot of people, and we had really good give and take among the people that we spoke to. And we will continue to do outreach both for this proposal and especially for the broader conversation over the next 2 years, which is going to be as much about principles and policies as about lines.
One thing I wondered, Natalie, around this is there's a way for people to say I disagree, but there's not a way for people to say like yes, it's fine, and I don't need to come to the forum because I feel really good about it. So as we were thinking about Bang the Table, I don't know. There's also a way to say yes, I feel good about what you've done. Check, I have my support. And then actually I have a lot of concerns. And I don't have a sense of where people sit, but I wonder if that's also why we heard some less feedback.
And Bettina, I want to speak to that because I was, as Chip was talking, I said, well, just like Matt said, I looked at Brogdon and it's a great school. And I think our parents may have said, wow, okay, I'm going to a different school. I really like it. I've seen the video. I know kids that go there. It's great, as with Parkwood. So whereas there may be some angst among some families, I think there is an agreement and excitement among our families about going to some place that's really super. So I want to be on that tip. I think that's where we're going.
And one point of clarification, the name of the company and the platform is Bang the Table. That's not what we're going to call it. It is going to be ignite.dpsnc.net.
Thank you. In addition to what Mrs. Soudoff just mentioned, so we're going to try to reach out to more parents at CC Spalding as well, Lakewood. So any opportunity that they have for the PTA meetings, Title I meetings, we're going to go there and make sure we have a good 15 or 20-minute presentation as well. So we have another opportunity with Latinx forums that will be coming up. So we're going to improvise ourselves and go there and present our plan as well. So this work is going to continue. So we will want to make sure that we reach out to the broader community, and we're going to go where we can find them.
And I want to say, while you're talking about reaching out, our staff was out 3 nights out of this week. It has been grueling for you all. So we have to know that we celebrate the commitment and time you have, and we want Dr. Mbinga to stop working you so very hard. But we certainly do appreciate the time that you've taken to inform our community and make sure that we're up on things.
Well, and as we've done that, you guys have scheduled more meetings. So there's a November 4th meeting at Githens that we didn't talk about, but where we're going specifically to hear, within that impacted school community. So I appreciate you guys being so responsive.
I do have a question. It's very different than everything we've just talked about. And I've seen this presentation multiple times, and I just thought about this today. The sibling preference we talked about for Creekside Parkwood, it said sibling linked in the slide, but we didn't have any conversations around that for Githens, and if there would be any, if I have an 8th grader at Githens and I have a rising 6th grade, or a 7th grader with a rising 6th grader, would there be I can stay at Githens, or will we need to split those families? And the answer could be we don't know yet, but I would just wanted to explore that.
Historically, there's been a sibling linkage policy when we look back at previous initiatives, so we've accounted for that. And I think it's an important clarifying question. One of the reasons we were focused on it with Creekside was because of the grade span. You have everything from kindergarten through 5th grade, and that's a relatively short-term projected impact region. So that's one of the reasons there was a more acute awareness of the sibling linkage. But traditionally, we try to be as minimally disruptive, as with board preference and policy, as minimally disruptive to school families as we can. Yeah.
Thank you.
So first of all, I just want to say, as several of us have said, thank you to the entire staff. I just think the level of thoughtfulness and analysis has been incredibly impressive. And, after we hear from parents, after we go through we see the comments, we have the public hearing, we may make changes, that's our job to do, but it won't be because of a lack of thoughtfulness and preparation. So thank you, and it gives me hope as we move forward that we can do this well. Because it's very difficult work, and we're talking about people's children, and it's hard to do. So thank you. I guess to my colleagues on the board, I never thought I'd be in this position of the conservative voice saying to just kind of recognize the limited power of government. But here I am. I just think we can have goals, we can have values, but I do think we need to recognize there are limits as to what we're able to do. And I look at the analysis that you all presented, and all of that seems well within the realm of a degree of change that is pretty minimal, considering all the parameters that we have to look at. And I think certainly looking forward, it's pretty clear how little control we actually have over the decisions that families end up making. And so to not tie ourselves up in knots trying to achieve a goal that 3 years later doesn't exist because families have made other choices. I also want to say to the parents that have already written to us that, given the stakes, it's been impressive to me, the thoughtfulness of the commentary we've gotten from parents, that people have clearly gone out of their way to recognize the challenges of the work, and I appreciate that. Certainly, I remember the merger discussions, and many remember those, and I don't remember anybody starting those by saying, we recognize how difficult all this is. They were usually throwing things kind of at that point. And then just kind of final point of emphasis, I believe, don't think we can say this over enough. You're expecting us to approve a public hearing. Is that correct? Is that part of our job tonight, is to set that date for that public hearing? And I think you're suggesting November 7th. And so when we reach that point, I just want to make sure we make that decision and give emphasis that tonight, and then as we go forward with our communication, that we can't say it loudly enough and often enough to come. I know Matt Sears has said that he wants to hear from everybody, so everybody.
Personally.
Come, Matt, November 7th.
We don't have to, do we have to vote on that, Ken? We could just set a meeting. We don't have to vote on a meeting, right?
You have a meeting. I think you could vote on it, or you as the chair could, and I think, is it proposed for before the regular start time? So the chair could set it, or the group could vote on it either way.
So we would begin the public hearing at 5, hold a public hearing, and then close it, and then we would begin the work session later, at whatever time, however amount of time you give for the public hearing.
Is it possible to start the public hearing at 4:30? So that I think starting at 5 and having a regular work session means that we're extending the time that staff and us will need to be here. So if we could start maybe at 4:30, that'll give us a little, hopefully shorten that window a little bit.
Have we seen any difference or adjustment in our work session time moving from 4:30 to 5?
No.
Or
Not
do we see
that
that
I can see.
more persons are here with us since we moved it down?
Not that I can see.
Okay.
Part of me, one of our community members wrote and said, I'd like to know that the commissioners are going to come up with the money for elementary C before y'all start moving students, which is a reasonable point, right? So part of me wonders if there's a little bit more validity in nudging that November, that hearing after we meet with the commissioners and have more feedback from them.
Well,
I've been waiting for them to write that check for a long time.
This isn't something that can wait. We have, so if the money's going to be there or not, we still have to make some sort of a move, right? We can't say, well, we don't know yet for the county commissioners, and we put off everything. This is separate. These moves here are separate entirely from the building of elementary school C. That is something. That's something we're working with the county commissioners on to do. But this, like they've mentioned, this is a short-term solution, right? It's going to open up a broader conversation. From our last meeting, the county commissioners have said that they're interested in definitely moving forward with the shovel-ready school, and we'll let that up to them. But this is entirely different. I see this as entirely different from whether or not elementary school C is built at the proposed time. I see it as a separate thing.
I see your point, and we could have had this school, elementary C, open by now, right?
Let me put it like this.
Yep.
If they say no, you can't build that school, do we scrap these plans? Are you seeing us scrapping the plans? We're making these moves.
No, I don't think we're at the point where we're scrapping any plans, but
Right.
I want our community to be able to bring their voices in this process. And I wonder if after the 12th, we will have the scenarios from the county of what they're willing to fund, whether it's one school, two schools,
Well, let's use this public meeting to hear the voices. Then we'll say, all right, everybody, let's go down to the county commissioners next week and say the same thing down there as we need elementary school C, F, we need G.
Can I just ask, when are we talking about actually making the decision?
Voting.
We're not talking about that on the 7th, or do you have a?
We're not voting on that, no.
So what we're really talking about is hearing from parents about this proposal, and I think that they're going to respond to the proposal independent of that decision by the county.
Right.
But if we know that these children are going to be moving in 2020, the decision is going to be made soon.
Right.
So the sooner we hear from parents and say that, we're getting your input, we're listening to you, but this is how we're moving, we're letting you know how this is happening, the sooner they know, then they're able to plan as well. So November 7th is it for us. And then we want our parents to go down to the county commissioners meeting. We meet them here jointly on the 12th. come and join us and tell them we need school C,
It's right here.
F, and G.
Through K.
So I do have one other thought, and I'm just going to throw this out, and you can shoot it down if you want to, but I hate this particular venue for a setting when we think we might have large numbers of people. It leaves people out in the hallway. I mean, it's just, it's a terrible venue for that kind of setting. And I wonder if we could have that meeting in a school or in the county building or somewhere that accommodates a larger crowd.
I can speak to the county commissioner and see if we can have it over there. We would still host it. It's just it'll be in their place. On the 12th.
No, no, I was talking about the 7th.
Oh, you mean our
Yeah, our
hearing. Oh,
our hearings. I just, people.
Can we have it at the
people
school?
out in the
At Jordan, in the auditorium?
Going to be affected right now, going to be from Spalding and Lakewood
and
and
then
Creekside.
Right.
So we need something really.
But they all go up
central.
to Jordan, so Jordan is a good. I think would
Too
be a good
far
location.
for my people to come from Spalding. It's too far.
Let's
we can kick
I'll
it to
work with-
administration
yeah.
and see. The other thing is to just kind of get a feel over the next week from the principals if they think there's going to be a large turnout or not.
Spalding will be central, right?
But I don't know if they have a big, I don't know how big a space they have. So.
Their auditorium is big.
Is it?
Yeah. I went to the meeting at Spalding. Okay. And it's a big, big stage, big auditorium. Well, we'll figure that out. We'll let the administration figure that out, and then we'll notify. But that's a good idea. I think it's a good idea. Okay.
Just on record that I hate this space for that kind of setting.
So,
If you could fix that, Mr. Monk.
Yes, ma'am.
sorry, I just have one more. I know why you like Cornwallis as a natural boundary. I would appreciate y'all doing an analysis with transportation on those pockets that are near Duke Forest and whether long-term their transportation makes sense to go south or a bigger piece go north. They are, to me, kind of an isolated island peninsula thing over there. And I think that would be helpful to dig in whether that Cornwallis piece near Duke Forest and those small groups of kids whether they relate more to Githens or Brogdon, going forward and running buses down Cornwallis and picking up kids. I think that would be helpful to me, at least, to look at that.
Would it be suitable to do an evaluation of Cornwallis on both the north and south side and just understand the distances from there to Brogdon? Would that be?
It's not the entire length of Cornwallis. It is, and I understand in town you can't, there has to be a boundary. But when I look at a map, there are some very isolated handful of children. And the notion of running buses way out west and running them to both schools, I think it would be worth looking into the efficiencies there. Yeah,
Sure.
If that's helpful.
We can follow up with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Okay.
Is it appropriate to mention again, and we did this really well at the public hearings, this is the temporary, this is the short-term pain. Mm-hmm. It's painful.
Yeah.
And quick. We're launching the new process over 2 years, starting in January.
That's correct.
Or we can say that the better, and the district's done a good job saying that.
Healthy things grow, growing things change, and change challenges us. We have to remember that.
Okay.
Did you set November 7th? Are we official?
On the
Because we
November
did
7th
have
as the
some
public
4:30
hearing.
and 5 discussion that I don't think we.
I'll set it. I'll approve it.
I just think if we could do it now, then all those millions of people watching something.
Okay. So we're gonna have a meeting on November 7th. And the location to be determined. We're looking at C.C. Spalding and maybe some centralized locations. It's official, and we said 4:30. If that works with the administration, because after school and, you know, we have to deal with after school pickup and everything like that. So pencil it in for 4:30. We'll make it official after we work with the administration at C.C. Spalding Elementary. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. All righty. Closed session. I will accept a motion to go into closed session for the reasons stated on the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded that we go into closed session for the reasons stated on the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please use the same sign. It passes unanimously. We are now in closed session.
watch you laugh and see that amazing smile.
too. I second it. I second it. So just hold that to hold accountable to make sure she take off. Yeah.
Hardy has set a new standard.
Yeah.
We must get her exhausted before the board meetings.
That works. Yeah, definitely. That works. Oh boy.
Yeah, we'll take a photo before we disperse.
Looking good.
Yeah?
Yeah. Looks good.
Okay, we match.
Yeah. Let me share something with you before we
Yeah. You want after? Yeah, okay. All right, let's go. Hustle.
Yes, that's correct.
I love you so much. I'm like, when you got your baby.
We are now back in open session. Dr. Mabenga.
Board members, I'm here to seek your approval for the personnel report as discussed in the closed session.
Move approval of the personnel report for October 24th, 2019.
Second?
Been moved and properly seconded that we approve the personnel report dated October 24th, 2019. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please use the same sign. Passes unanimously. And with that, we are adjourned.
No, I think that's for the